Chapter 5. New World. Looking at each other, every one of them was glimmering in reverence and utmost loyalty, as if it felt like their faith in a devotee. He knew that if he ordered any command, they would heed it without any hesitation, even if they refuted or doubted it, because in the end, their goal was to please him. He was filled with joy seeing them in person rather than just pixels on screen. It seems everyone is here, Erix said, stepping into his self-made throne and tapping his spear while Demiurge spoke. Lord Erix, there are one more people who have not yet arrived. He said it in a resonant voice that seemed to pour into one's heart. No. Those Fenrir are only to be moved under special circumstances. Therefore, there is no need to call her over at the moment. I see. Demiurge didn't press anymore. Then, everyone, let us pledge our loyalty to the Supreme One. All the guardians nodded as one, and Erix arrogantly rested his cheek on his knuckle, watching them line up before him. Albedo stood at their heads, while the other guardians formed a line behind her. All the guardians had solemn, respectful expressions. They showed no sign of playing around. Sheltier, who stood on one end of the line, stepped forward. Sheltier Bloodfallen, guardian of the first, second, and third floors, presents herself to the master. She went to one knee, one hand pressed against her chest, and bowed deeply. After that, Cocytus stepped forward and said, Cocytus, guardian of the fifth floor, presence himself to master. Much like Sheltier had, he kneeled before Erix like a vassal before a lord. Then, it was the twin dark elves' turn. The guardian of the sixth floor, or Bellafiore, presents herself to the master. Al, also a guardian of the sixth floor, Mare Bellafiore, presents herself to the master. They knelt respectfully and lowered their heads to Erix. Sheltier, Cocytus, Aura, and Mare all had different bodies, and thus they should have taken their steps forward differently. Yet, the way with which they knelt was identical, and they lined up neatly. After that, Demiurge advanced in a dignified manner. The guardian of the seventh floor, Demiurge, presents himself to the master. Following his crisp words, Demiurge went to one knee in a graceful descent, as though expressing his heart through his actions. Next was his daughter, Slaanesh, who spoke in reverence and joy. The guardian of the eighth floor, Slaanesh, presents herself to my lord father. Her voice was rather soothing yet seductive. That was what people call MILF, and one sand voice that stiffened his northern region. Finally, Albedo stepped forward as well. The guardian overseer Albedo presents herself to the master. She smiled at Erix and knelt like the other guardians. However, Albedo continued speaking in a high and clear voice as she delivered a report to Erix. With the exception of the fourth floor guardian Fenrir, all the floor guardians are gathered before you. Thus do we offer up our utmost loyalty to the master. Albedo remained kneeling while Erix Grin released his aura that overwhelmed and cast pressure that was enough for them to know who was their ruler. He was their master, and it was fair that he should act like one. Raise your heads. Everyone raised their heads. Their coordination was so immaculate that Erix wondered if they had practiced that movement together. Firstly, I thank all of you for coming here. There is no need for thanks. We are all Lord Erix's loyal subordinates. To us, Lord Erix is our supreme overlord. Demiurge replied without hesitation, trying to show that they were his servants, and that it's natural for them to obey. Lord Erix, it is only natural that you should have doubts about us. After all, our abilities must be minuscule in your reckoning. Albedo removed the smile from her face and continued in a respectful tone that was laced with stern strength. However, if Lord Erix gives the order, we all the guardians will accomplish any task set to us, no matter how difficult or arduous, with every fiber of our beings. We hereby swear that we will never allow the 41 supreme beings of Ain Zulgaun, our creators, to be disgraced by our actions. This, we swear. The floor guardians chimed in right after Albedo. Their voices were filled with power, and their adamant loyalty and determination would not be diminished by any number of foes. Erix smiled like Alucard from Helsing, showing his sharp teeth, then another pair of eyes below his normal eyes, and began to applaud, making the guardian feel filled with joy. Excellent. Guardians, I know that you will understand my aims and successfully carry out my commands. There may be some things that are difficult to understand, but I hope you will pay attention and listen. I believe the great underground tomb of Nazarick has been caught up in some kind of unknown situation. The guardians' faces were still stern, and there was no trace of surprise on them. I somewhat predicted this event long before including the other supreme beings. Erix wanted to at least put their minds at ease about their creator, and find a way to respect them. Despite everything, they were still useful in accomplishing his goal. May you elaborate, Lord Erix? Demiurge was quick to ask, as he was the smartest among them, and always prepared numerous plans beforehand. Everything is to the benefit of Erix. I'll elaborate once Sebas has returned from surveying our current location. However, I must ask if there have been any changes in your floors. Erix pondered the possibility that certain changes had occurred within Nazarick, since certain things that should have been useless became useful. The 8th floor remains as lively as ever, Lord Father. There are no abnormalities on the 7th floor. Same with the 6th floor. It's as Nietzsche says. The 5th floor is ... same. Nothing strange has been sighted in the first to third floors. Lord Erix, I shall investigate the fourth floor right away. Albedo spoke for Fenrir, who was not present, and Erix nodded. Then, report me anything strange that may occur. It will be done. They said it in unison, and a few minutes later, Sebas was jogging over to them until he reached the Guardians, genuflecting before Erix and going to one knee as well. Erix noticed a familiar creature that was knocked out. An elderly goblin and a young one with clothes wrapped around his head. Lord Erix, forgive my lateness. It's fine. What a turn of events it is. Erix left his throne, getting closer to the unconscious goblin, and rubbed his chin, then glanced at Sebas. Great work bringing them without any harm. Your praise is surely an exaggeration, for I'm your servant, and it's natural for me to obey. Erix taps his spear into the goblin to dispel the spell, waking them up, and instantly their groggily minds go high alert and quickly kowtow, planting their heads into the ground, while the other guardian watches in fascination. It may be, Great One. Shakily spoke to the elder as he recognized the power of every individual around him. He was unsure how he arrived in such a place, but knowing that he was still alive meant that he had some use. Remember it well, he is silent. Albedo was about to introduce him when Erix stopped her, making the demon docile, while the Scarlet King looked down at the goblin and said, It pleases me that you can be communicated with. I am the Crimson Monarch, Erix Khan, sovereign of this place. May I ask, does the name Vildor sound familiar? Yes, he is our guardian who protected our home with his presence, however, he has been missing for 2 weeks now. You're already here. Interesting. Erix thought for a moment, looking at the goblin, and went back to his self-made throne. Interesting indeed. Snap. He knocked them out once more, while Erix took a moment to think and consider all possibilities. I'm in Tensura, but the possibility of it being mixed is high. We need more information, but I'm at least aware of who the enemies are. Information gathering is the highest priority before starting the Aura Crusade. Erix burst out laughing, confused the Guardian, and continued to laugh until it slowly died down and was said to all of the Guardians. As I've said before, I somewhat understand the situation and hope to share this with all of you. Once I told you to spread it to every denizen of our Nazarick. Everyone perked up, waiting for his next words. The other 41 knew the day would come. The day of Ragnarok was upon Yggdrasil. Ragnarok. Yes, it was an Armageddon that even with all the might of the other 41 wouldn't be able to go against. They had no choice but to leave Yggdrasil for good, and they weren't able to bring any of you along. They all suddenly feel as if their parents left them to die, but they are still happy that they still exist. Chapter 6. The Kaiser of Despair. Lord Erix, do you know where Lady Bukubikuchigama went? Mare asked, wanting to know where her mother had gone. It was obvious that all guardians wished to know where their creator had gone, and wanted to learn about their whereabouts to ensure their safety. Erix didn't care much about how they missed them, since they would become reliable in the new world for his goal. In the game of Yggdrasil, they often bicker with his guild members in ways such as handling raids and the distribution of resources and rewards. He did try his best to trick and manipulate them to ensure most, if not all, benefit was given to him, but he made sure to gain their trust to let their guard down. Therefore, if he ever had other members who would refute him, it would be far too troublesome, unlike the NPC who are loyal to him. Erix would likely kill them if they were ever transported to the new world, since they would get in his way. It was fortunate they had all gone to the real world. Yes, but I have no way of reaching out anymore. The reason we are still alive is because I vowed to save each and every one of you, even if your creator had placed their faith in me. It was no lie because they all gave permission to just mess with their things, since they were all worthless now. This meant their world item and other in-game items had been given to him, which only made Erix more powerful. Erix plans on visiting the treasury and library later, but he first heads towards his living quarter, which was a hidden floor that he made. I learned of a way to save us, and that was to face every final boss in the 9 realms before facing the apocalyptic beast that was Ginnungagap, where our battle shook the entire realm of Yggdrasil. It was not a lie, and it had taken hours upon hours of timing and dedication that he managed to pull through, overcoming the fight that was almost clutch, but the reward paid off because he was technically the ruler of Yggdrasil now. He had used a special world item called Peach of Immortality that allowed him to be invincible for 3,000 in-game hours, accompanied by a world item called Crown of the Crimson Monarch that he personally requested, using a world item called Ouroboros before the end of the game, and the developers didn't care about balance anymore at that time. The effect grants the user an increase in their base stats to 100x, and removes the level cap. Additionally, any conquered land dungeons that the user had attained would be immune to any debuff, even if that was a world item. Considering the fact that he and his guildmate conquered all final bosses within the 9 realms, they allowed him to solo them with mid to high difficulty. However, the final boss of all 9 realms resulted in a desperate battle, considering the Peach of Immortality was bypassed by Ginnungagap, and forcing him to use other world-class items called Spell of Longinus that deleted his game character, but he followed his gut feeling, which worked in his favor, because the effect was nullified when he became the Monarch of Yggdrasil. They rewarded him with all ownership of all world-class items. Erix found it generous from the game developers, and knew it was a way for them to thank him, since he was the most dedicated player among them. It was pleasing to know, since they thought it wasn't bad if the game balance is broken when the game is deleted anyway. He stored all of them in his treasury, and aimed to use them against someone like Guy Crimson or anyone that would be troublesome to fight. Erix is too broken, but all of the world items still likely have systematic algorithms, compared to ultimate skill, which defies the world. He needs to take precautions against Guy with his ultimate skill of virtually copying and pasting skills. In that moment when I was defeated, that beast was where I received a way to save us, and now we are here within an entirely new world to explore and conquer. The word conquer popped up and made Demiurge intrigue. Conquer, you say? Indeed, I intend to spread the greatness of the great tomb of Nazarick, and create my own empire in this world. Perhaps go beyond it and explore other worlds if possible. Erix was excited at the thought of new challenges and the thrill of exploring new lands and conquering them. Every guardian was ecstatic and eager to execute his plan as early as they could. Yes, we shall show this new world of your brilliant, my lord. Shaltir spoke. Indeed, it is a blessing that this world shall fall under Lord Erix's reign. Whoever goes against his will shall perish. Albedo shared her thoughts, and Erix nodded upon hearing their thoughts. I am pleased that all of you are eager. However, we shall take things slow and gather as much information as possible. It is best to stay cautious and take everything into consideration, as it would be foolish to be arrogant rather than confident. Erix continued discussing the course of action like Ains did, carefully considering their thoughts, and making sure the great tomb was hidden and protected, before he's confident enough to fight Guy and Rudra. He pondered why his status was different compared to the natives, but didn't think too hard, since his skills could be considered ultimate, especially his racial and job class. Erix is already prepared for this kind of scenario and confident in winning, even if it's not confrontational. Finally, I have a question for the Guardians. To begin with, Shaltir, what kind of person am I to you? An incarnation of beauty. You are the most beautiful person in the world. Even jewels pale in comparison to your snow-white body. The epitome of a man. The true eternal ruler of my heart. Shaltir did not pause to think about her answer before she gave it. From the lack of delay in her reply, she must have been speaking from the heart. Albedo slightly flinched upon hearing her and wanted to refute, but was already warned by Erix earlier. Cossetus. One. Who is mightier than all the Guardians, and deserving of the title of the Supreme Monarch of the Great Underground Tomb of Nazarick, or a merciful leader with great foresight. Mayor, a very gentle person. Demiurge, a wise leader who makes decisions and acts on them quickly. Truly, a man worthy of the title inscrutable. Slunish, unparalleled power of depravity and carnage. Supreme existence, who drowned the 9 realms of blood and viscera. A ruthless and merciless yet caring and loving monarch of the great tomb of Nazarick. A peerless entity worthy of the title Kaiser of Despair. Sebas, the one responsible for assembling all the supreme beings. In addition, the merciful leader who did not abandon us but stayed by our side until the very end. And finally, Albedo. The man who rules over the supreme beings is our highest, most exalted master. In addition, the man I love most deeply. They all finished their thoughts and opinions of Erix Khan, who took a moment until he loudly tapped his spear, that echoed across the amphitheater, and released his oar, which made the guardian his imposing power. He stood up and said, "Your words of praise fill my heart with immense joy. I shall trust you that each and every last one of you will accomplish the task I've given you faithfully. I'll be heading to the Nazarick library. Contact me if anything happens. Sebas, bring these 2 goblins once you acquire every piece of information from them. Use hypnosis magic instead of torture." "Ah, come on, Lord Father. Patience now, daughter. If you misbehave, then." Erix narrowed his gaze at his daughter, who became docile and apologized for her action. "Apologize, Lord Father. I have overstepped my boundaries. It is fine. I understand why you wish to torture me, as I made you that way. Worry not, there are always bandits and foolish idealistic heroes to be mercilessly tortured." Slanish was happy to hear it, and Erix turned his back, deleting the throne, before teleporting towards the library, as he decided to walk a bit towards the hallway, meeting the homunculus maid, who greeted him and opened doors for him. "My lord, where are you heading? May I be of assistance?" Chapter 7. Evolution. The voice came, and Erix turned his attention and found a young woman who exuded an air of elegance, yet mischief demeanor around her. She had purple eyes and long, muted pink hair that was tied at the bottom. She also has fox ears, while notably lacking a tail. Her outfit consists of a unique and stylized variation of clothing, inspired by the colors of a shrine priestess's traditional outfit. She wears a golden head accessory accompanied by matching golden earrings. The right earring is wrapped in a complex drop-shaped piece, and decorated by a small fan-shaped accessory at the bottom. The earrings are attached to her ears by diamond-shaped studs. I am heading towards the library and may not need your assistance, but I do like some company, Yemeko. Yemeko from the game Genshin Impact had her maid since the game didn't exist in the version of Earth he was in. She was a replacement for Oriole Omega, making her the leader and eldest sister of the Pleiades. Then I shall come with you and provide my assistance if the situation arises, especially how our head librarian acts. Hahaha, I can't argue with that. Anyway, let us depart. The Yemeko nodded as the two headed their way to the library, while Erix told her everything that was happening, and was shocked to hear them. If that is the case, then I shall do my part in helping you achieve your goal, Lord Erix. You have my gratitude, Yemeko. Make sure that the maid is well rested to ensure that they perform their duty to the utmost perfection. It will be done, my lord. Erix didn't say anything and proceeded to look at the large door where Yemeko opened it for him. He was greeted by a row of bookshelves where, moving closer, at the center was an astral globe that was different from what Erix remembered. This was a world item called the 7-phase view. It is straightforward when it comes to its ability, as the time grants an unrestricted view of the 9 realms, even other guild bases, for only a few hours, but Erix aims to make it permanent using another world item. The whole library appeared magical, where floating bookcases hovered in the air as more books were on the wall, stretching upward, appearing like a tower. Lord Erix. A female voice could be heard heading towards them as Erix looked up and saw a young woman who had long purple-pink hair that reached down to her knees and 2 white wings protruding near her hips. Her pupils are purple, surrounded by gold iris. Her ears are wing-shaped, and she also has a halo over her head. She usually has her midriff exposed and wears a long skirt. She also has a slim and well-endowed body. She has the physique of an 18-year-old, but in actuality, she is much older. Erix stepped aside, making the young woman fall flat on the floor, as Yemeko giggled watching the incident unfold as the young woman groaned in pain. That hurt. Why did you dodge, Lord Erix? You don't know how much I've missed you. She complained, yet a hint of enjoyment was present, as she seemed to like how she was treated by Erix, who ignored her as she walked towards the 7-phase view. How Erix could hear her squirming and panting, aroused at being ignored. Yemeko shook her head and said, Jibril, as much as I like seeing you like this, please act appropriately in the presence of our lord. Jibril, the same one from No Game, No Life, placed her as the librarian and financial manager, removing Pandora's actor. Despite how she acts, Jibril is the 3rd smartest among Demiurge and Albedo. She playfully smiled before changing his demeanor, which was once childish, into a serious one as she kneeled down and said, The head librarian, financial manager and guardian of the treasury, Jibril, welcome your presence, Lord Erix. What can I do for you? Erix reached out from his pocket dimensions, taking out a small stone that glowed in prismatic color. That was a world-class item core that allowed him to make requests from the developers, but since they don't exist and this is the Tensura world, he would be essentially hacking the algorithm of the voice of the world. I am here to collect some items from the treasury. In addition to informing you about our current situation, I will be giving you a task. Erix began to transform, where horns appeared on his head and 3 pairs of red feathered wings, akin to an angel that appeared as if it were rotting, yet didn't lose its magnificence. Erix intuitively felt something was about to happen, and quickly used a skill called Source of the Overvoid, Ein Sof, that grants users the ability to isolate a dimension, or create a separate isolated dimension, where users are spatially locked without normal restriction. Enemies trapped in the isolated dimension would receive a 10x debuff, even with the highest resistance. One of the rare skills he obtained from a hidden quest. He knew that the voice of the world might act and announce his arrival. It would be the last thing he wants since he has yet to gauge his power against people like guys and militias. Once he finished noticing how the effect was different from the game, he was happy with the effect. He hovers upward to reach the 7-phase view, and sends the world item ore towards it, while thinking about what he desires for it. Jibril and Yemeko watched from below, as they saw the stone disintegrated and absorbed by the world item, as Erix heard the voice of the world. Erix Khan, do you wish to use Nirvana's stone? To remove all restrictions on the world, item, 7-phase view. 7-phase view had turned into a Genesis class item. Unknown existence had been detected. Analyzing. Erix could feel the energy around him begin to churn as he felt something was rejecting him, but he merely found the sensation to be thrilling. He wasn't able to feel his blood boil even in the game, only giving him a small dose of dopamine, but now that everything was real, he was more excited. The other guardian felt a change occurring within the great tomb of Nazarick, but they all recognized that it was their lord who was doing it, and were eager to learn what had happened, but they all had their tasks to be done, therefore they would need to be patient. Meanwhile, Jibril and Yemeko couldn't help but kneel down, sensing the change, as Erix smiled when the voice of the world spoke once more. Unknown existence had been recognized. Compensation had been placed. You have acquired the ultimate skill. Monarch of Despair, Karg. Subordinates had received their compensation. Do you wish to become a true demon lord? Do you wish to become a true dragon? Erix smirked despite the agonizing pain he was in upon hearing the notification, pondering if Kai and other demon lords heard the announcement even with the isolated dimension, but he was at least confident that they wouldn't immediately take action and take time to discuss it, giving Erix enough time to hide. It was good that I split my build between dragon and demon. Though the combination is certainly strong, knowing how difficult each of them is to level, meant that only a madman like me would level every part of it. He recalled how his guild member often scolds him for making such a difficult build, but the end result pays off, especially the bonus and racial trait. He received the title of Madness Dragon from Erix. For now, let's wait until I get to my floor. Erix nodded at the result and descended, turning his attention to his subordinates. He immediately knew something had happened. Congratulations, Lord Erix. Though we may not know what just occurred, we believe you achieved something great today. Yameko spoke in reverence. Indeed, it appears I've transcended my limits and achieved new heights. All of you appear to have acquired the same. We can discuss everything later. For now, Jibril and Yamel come with me to the treasury as I need something inside. Then I shall lead the way, Lord Erix. Jibril excitedly said as she flapped her wings, while Erix nodded to remove the spell and followed her to the treasury. Chapter 8. Crown for the Scarlet King. Edited. Walking towards the treasury, where Jibril opens the entrance to the treasury. They were greeted by the treasure hall, a gallery that contains a limitless ceiling, and is literally filled with mountains of treasure. While the enormous quantities of gold and luxurious items may appear staggering, the items placed here are considered to be of little value, compared to what is locked further in the vaults. The vast amount of treasure meant that the only way to get through was to fly across the mountains of gold, effectively towards the gate that leads into the deep recesses of the treasury. The blood of Jormungandr, an unknown item, produces a poison cloud that renders the surrounding air highly toxic to prevent thieves from trespassing. If one does not possess any abilities or tools capable of countering this toxicity, they would drop dead within 3 steps. Erix is immune to it, along with the Guardian, allowing them to step onto the other side of the chamber. There was a recess in the wall that is in the shape of a door, but looks like a bottomless pit. The door could only be opened with a predetermined password. Perhaps with high-level magic or a special skill from the rogue class, one could force their way through this door. He placed the password and entered the next room, where there was a 100-meter-long tunnel behind the door of the treasury. It was an orderly place, similar to a museum. The dimly lit room was very long and stretched inward. The ceiling was about 5 meters above the ground, having not been designed for humans, while it was about 10 meters from one wall to the other. The ground was made of tightly fit, shiny black stone blocks, and it looked like a single gigantic stone slab. Neat rows of countless weapons were arrayed on the walls to the left and right, making it an impressive display. The types of weapons in the armory were almost uncountable, as contained within were broadswords, greatswords, estocs, etc. He glanced at Yameko, who rarely got the chance to see the treasury, and was amazed at how breathtaking they were. Next was the place at the end of the tunnel of the armory to receive guests. A tomb-like rectangular room that was composed of a table and sofa was set in the middle of the empty space. There were other passages visible to the left and right, similar to the path from the armory. The height of the room was about 5 meters, but the dim interior extended further in, where a large niche was set into the wall, which is where the mausoleum is located. Speaking of the final place, the mausoleum, which was built by him in honor of those guild members, acts as a special shrine to them. While all of the guild members' personal equipment is stored here, the great golden stone statues known as Avatar equip those items in their likeness as an honor to them. Avatars are golems who act as the guardians of the guild members' relics they're equipped with. Additionally, the mausoleum has a special defense mechanism that will only activate should a ring bearer of the Ring of Ainzulgaun enter its range of premises. The golems will then awaken and attack the ring bearer, using the very weapons formerly possessed by the guild members of Ainzulgaun. Therefore, one must enter without having on a Ring of Ainzulgaun, in order to bypass the activation of the final defense mechanism. Though I'm selfish and greedy, that does not mean I am not a man who has his sentiments. They were still my comrades of ours and had their use in the end. Erix looks at each of the statues, while Yameko asks about them, and explains what they were, making her quite happy to see her creator honor the other supreme being. You two, stay here, I'll be gone for a little while. The next room is only for guild leaders. Indeed, the next room was specifically made by him and created after finishing Yggdrasil, and he placed all the worldly items neatly within the next room. Then we shall await your return, my lord. Erix nodded and continued his walk towards the next room, where a large crimson door was placed. It requested a word for it to open, and upon answering the door, it began to open. It was like a gate portal, and he stepped inside to be met with rows and columns of world items, where at the center were his personal items requested and used at all times. He stepped forward, getting closer, and got a closer look at the world item, which was the crown of the Crimson Monarch, which appeared more similar to a halo than a crown, and he reached out. Erix instantly felt the power it exuded and said, "It's been a while." He looked at the crowd, feeling sentiment at how far he had come from having a nihilistic and mundane life, where everything didn't give him any excitement, to having reached a power close to godhood. The crown seemed to glow as Erix smiled and said, "Today, a new challenge and journey await us." The crown glowed in response as he placed it into his head, and in an instant, his power exploded even further than before, feeling a link between him and the world item. He exudes an even more powerful, dreadful aura, and gradually it settles, completing his prime look. Thus I'll upgrade you as well. But I can't overuse Source of Overvoid, Einsoft too often. For now, accompany me on my journey. The spear in his hand vibrates, greeting the crown that did the same as Erix understood that they have an ego and sentience. He nodded and thought about upgrading every piece of equipment that he has in the future to grow even stronger. Erix foresaw where his armor set was divine rank, and had customized its ability and function. The armor is essentially a symbiote that can change form, having been written about in the legend about the set of armor. He didn't take any more world items, worried that they might be able to take them from him. The world item that he took was enough for his opponent. Erix left and met up with Yumeko and Jibril, who sensed the change. "I'm finished here, I'll be on my floor. But before I go, I have a task for you too." "What would that be, Lord Erix?" "You, Jibril, are granted the right to use the 7-phase view to spy on the world, but take precautions to not expose yourself to the enemy. If you feel they notice you spying, then immediately stop and report it to me as soon as possible. Take notes on the landscape and governing area before making a map for me." "As you command, my lord." "Yumeko, find Mare and help her hide Nazarick, as you have the highest caliber in terms of illusion magic." "It will be done." Erix nodded as he walked out of the treasury before putting on the Ainzul gown, where he teleported into his floor instantaneously. He stood at the pedestal, where in front of him was his home and the floor between the 9th and 10th floors of Nazarick, where it had the prize that he had won from the Yggdrasil tournament, having requested the place since he thought it was nice and was bored at the time. This place is a floating island at the edge where clouds inspired by Dana and Naga Jagannatha from Muckholder are guarded by abyssal beasts that are around levels 70 to 80. It's time to evolve. Erix didn't use his skill to isolate the space before to upgrade the crown, because he intended to use it again when he evolved to protect and hide himself from the outside. He moved in a more appropriate place until he used the Source of Overvoid, Einsoft, and isolated the entire floor, since the spell doesn't have a specific range, and only needed mana to determine the size and strength. Erix accepted becoming a true demon lord, and becoming a true dragon instantly caused him to feel an insane amount of pain, while the mana around him moved to accommodate his evolution. He began to change where red veins appeared on his neck and face while eyes opened on his armor, morphing his body. The energy bursts like a floodgate as it drowns the entire space with power that seems to prepare the upcoming entity. The spear and crown did not leave his sight, as a fleshy crimson cocoon began to envelope his entire body, spewing miasmic energy as Erix was completely encased in the cocoon. He could feel his consciousness slipping and something seemingly fusing into his body, until he felt the gentle caress of soft and delicate hands touching his body. There were one but two that seemed to have embraced him, but they slowly faded away as the pounding sound of his heartbeat began. The cocoon that was several hundred meters thick cracked, and an armored hand reached out as it broke through. It was a massive humanoid entity with deer antlers. He has 7 crimson eyes and a sharp toothy gaping maw. His skin is described as having the texture of burned human skin. Erix burst into monstrous laughter as notification was heard. It roared and shook the entire space before shattering the entire isolated space. Immature. The skill Dark Wisdom had turned into ultimate skill. Lord of Dark Magic, Mephistopheles. The Erix Khan race of demon and dragon had fused into demon dragon. The demon dragon evolved into the Armageddon demon dragon. An ego had formed within Crown of the Crimson Monarch. An ego had formed within Spear of Eradication. Manas. Aaron had been added to Crown of the Crimson Monarch. Manas. Amaya had been added to Spear of Eradication.